We're in Genesis chapter 29. This is one of the interesting chapters in the book of Genesis. We're not going to go through the whole chapter, but for a portion of it. Before I actually read, let me read first, beginning of verse 1. So Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east, and he looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. From that well they watered the flocks. A large stone was on the well's mouth. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the well's mouth. And Jacob said to them, "Brethren, where are you from?" And they said, "Well, we're from Haran." Then he said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We don't." So he said to them, "Is he well?" And they said, "He's well. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep." Then he said, "Look, it is still high days, and not time for the cattle to be gathered together, water the sheep, and go and feed them." They said, "Well, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. It came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. So she ran and told her father. And it came to pass when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him for a month. And Laban said to Jacob, "Because you're my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate. Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance, so Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, "I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter." And Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her." And Laban gathered together all the men of the palace and made a feast. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went in to her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me?" And Laban said, "Oh, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give you this one, and also the service which you served me still another 7 years." Then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, so he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. And Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Jacob also went into Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban still another 7 years. Okay, we have to give you a few reminders of what is actually happening in this whole scenario of what is happening in in Jacob's life. Let's go to the next slide, Ellie, if you would, for me. If you want to understand what is going on in Genesis, you have to understand that in the 3rd chapter, that is when Adam and Eve sinned, and God promises that there's going to be one to come. There's going to be a Messiah. There's going to be one of the seed of the woman. And you see this all throughout the whole book of Genesis. And we started out with the fall of Adam and Eve, seed of the woman, and then you have the descendants, which are all the seed of the woman. Adam, Seth, Enoch, Methuselah, Noah. We know things got so bad, God sent a flood. And then after the flood, you have Shem, Terah, Abraham, but you have Shem along with the Tower of Babel. But we have Terah, Abraham, Isaac, and I didn't load it up. It's supposed to say Jacob. I changed these slides, I think, at least three different times. I thought that I had loaded it, but I must not have. But all this actually leads to, and this is the line coming from the seed of the woman, it's leading to Jesus Christ. I know the reason why I bring that up is at this point in the account here in Genesis, notice that I didn't say story, because it's a historical account. The account here that you happen to see with Jacob is Jacob, do you know how old he is? He's approximately 77. Okay. He's about 77, but again, those years are different from our years because they lived a lot longer, and because they lived a lot longer, you could probably divide it into half and maybe even a little bit more than that. He's not married. So what's going to happen to the godly seed? What's going to happen? He needs to get married, right? That's got to happen. And so there is this concern as he is leaving home, and we know why he's leaving home. There's some concern as he's leaving home that he needs to find a wife. And if you go back one chapter, he's leaving home for two reasons. The first is in verse 41 of chapter 27. It says that Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father at hand, then I'm going to kill my brother Jacob. So Rebekah finds out about this and actually goes to her husband Isaac, and they talk to Jacob. And this Jacob, Isaac calls Jacob in chapter 28, verse 1. And he says that as Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said, I don't want you to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan like your brother Esau did. I want you to rise to go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, that's Laban, and take yourself a wife from there of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. So that's what he does. He leaves, and he travels 500 miles, and it looks like, from what we can tell, on foot. 500 miles. That's a long way on foot. Guess what? That's a lot of time to be thinking, isn't it? And so what you're thinking is, first I got to get away from my brother because my brother wants to kill me. And then you're thinking, I'm going to meet Uncle Laban. And as I meet Uncle Laban, by the way, Laban had not seen his sister. Rebekah had left 100 years before. That's a long time, isn't it? And so here Jacob is traveling to Laban, his uncle, and Esau had threatened to kill him. And yet Jacob has this vision, this dream. And that is the Jacob's ladder dream that we see in Genesis 28. And basically what God was saying to him is, I am going to bless you, Jacob. Here he is, 77. He's not even married yet at this point in time. He doesn't have any children, but God says that he's going to bless him and give him all these descendants. So on his mind, as he's on the way to Haran, he's thinking, I wonder who I'm going to meet. I'm going to meet a wife, and I don't know how this is going to work out. But I believe that God is going to be with me through this. And one of the things that I suggested is I think that Jacob is given a raw deal by many people, and people look at him very negatively, whereas there were some things that he did wrong, but I do believe that he is spiritually minded. And I think that, you see, if God is with me and keep this way, he says, you're going to be my God. This is a special place, the place of Bethel. Now, we don't know whether he stayed at Bethel, maybe a couple of days, maybe we don't know. But what he does is he leaves, and as he leaves, he's on his way to Haran, and he gets to Haran. And as he gets there, he's thinking. But I think also when he is there, that experience that he had at Bethel, it made a profound impact on his life, because when he comes back to the land, he worships God at Bethel again. This is a time in his life that he's, I think, looking over everything and saying, man, I probably shouldn't have tricked my brother like I did and pulled the wool over his eyes. And I believe it was a time of renewal and a time of repentance, a time where you could kind of start over. You do a lot of thinking when you're walking 500 miles, aren't you? Besides the question, am I going the right direction? And so he comes to this one spot, And there's these shepherds out there. It looks like there's 3 shepherds, and they got these sheep. And he's wondering, what are they doing? I mean, they're just standing around doing nothing. And there's a stone actually over the well. Now, I think the reason why the stone was there could be several reasons. One is you're living in an arid climate. What happens when the sun comes out to water? What does water do? It evaporates. Okay? They knew that back then. You also had wild animals sometimes that could, possibly get into the well, however that was. And then also thieves. I mean, people would claim other people's property sometimes. And so he asks this question, and he says, do you guys know Laban? And notice what is said here. There's not much conversation that's going on. In verse 5, it says, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they say, we know him. That's all they say. What does that tell you? Do they have a great opinion of him? Do they really know what kind of person Laban is like? We know him. We know who you're talking about. I mean, it seems like if he was a godly spiritual man, say, oh, yeah, Laban, he's well respected around here. He's a spiritually minded person. He will deal with you fairly as a business person, as a businessman. They don't say it. We know who he is. That's all they say. Well, then all of a sudden, a shepherd his tongues with a sheep. And they say, oh, well, that's Laban's daughter, Rachel. Now, I'm guessing that Leah helped around the house and took care of a lot of things around the homes. And at this point in time, Laban did not have the boys there to do some of the work. And so he had one of his daughters to do work, which was actually Rachel. But you think of this as this plays out, and all of a sudden, you see, is he well? And they say, notice what they say. He's well. Look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep. And then he said, look, it is still high day. It's in the middle of the day. Isn't it time for the cattle to be gathered? Shouldn't you water your sheep and go and feed them? What do you think he's doing? I want to meet her. Would you guys leave? I think that's what's going on here. And so he's wondering why now there's several reasons as to why they're not doing anything. One, they could be lazy. Okay? That could be it. 2, they could be younger boys and maybe they don't have enough strength to move the stone. That's a possibility also. But then it could be it could be another reason. I have a third reason down here somewhere.
Just that, like,
maybe they're just forgetful and forgot what they were. But as I'm thinking this playing out, I say to myself, this is very similar to what happened when Eleazar goes to the same location and say, all of a sudden Rebecca shows up. And Rebecca is a worker. And Rebecca brings all that water for the 10 camels. I mean, she's a worker. She's not somebody that you would pick a fight with. And she's not. Anybody that could carry that much water. Remember how much water camels can drink? They can drink 10 gallons in a couple of minutes. I mean, that's a lot of water. It's very, very similar to that. So I think, as I'm thinking through this whole thing, and I'm thinking of the story and putting myself in the story, I'm thinking that Jacob is doing a lot of praying along the way. Wouldn't you be praying if you were going to meet your wife that you had never met before? God, would you guide me? Would you plan out my steps? Would you help me to direct my way first, and I arrive at the right location. And so he's thinking of all these things. He says, why are you guys waiting? Now again, Jacob knows what he's talking about because Jacob had taken care of a lot of sheep in his lifetime thus far. He was a very responsible person. He was a hard worker. When he meets this prospective bride, because that's why he went. Remember, he went because of two reasons. One reason is because his brother was after him. And the second reason is to get a wife. And so he's going to meet his prospective bride. And he sees this girl coming, and one of the things running through his head is, this girl's not lazy. This girl's a worker. She's not only a worker, but wow, she's pretty good looking too. Yeah. And you know what? I'd like these guys to get out of here so I could have a conversation with him and get to know her a little bit. And so he runs over. They don't do anything about it by himself, which shows he was a man. By himself. He moves the stone by himself. And then the first thing he does is then he waters the flock. I don't know if he did it to impress her. I don't know if he did it to be alone with her. But what he does is he reveals himself to Rachel. And you see that in verse 11 and 12. It says that after he sees her, it says that he kissed Rachel. That was not anything romantic. That was just a greeting at that particular time. He lifted up his voice and he wept. Why did he? He had been traveling 500 miles. Here he arrives at the very destination that he thought of. He had been praying for a wife, and wow, right there. First girl he meets. And I think it was love at first sight. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative. He was Rebekah's son. So she ran and she told her father. And then when Laban heard about it, he thought, man, this is exciting. My sister's son is here. And so he runs out and he's thinking to himself, where's all the camels? Where's the money? Where's the treasure? Where's the dowry? Now that's not said here, but you can see that this plays out. It says, then it came to pass, and here we are, that it came to pass in verse 13, that when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, remember, she left 100 years before, if you work out the math. He ran to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him, brought him to his house, and he told Laban all these things. Now, you have to stop and say, what do you mean told him all these things? If you were Jacob, what would you tell your future father-in-law? I ran away because my brother's trying to kill me. And my mom and dad said that you have a wife for me here. I mean, could you imagine? It kind of sounds like, yeah, we'll see whether that story is true or not. You see the predicament he's in? So I think what he did, and somebody had written this, and I thought that this is really pretty, I think, profound. He said that Jacob came as a godly man and one repentant of his recent deceit, that he could do no other wives and relate the direct and the more remote reasons of his coming. In other words, he did share about his brother. Right. He did mention that he was in line for an inheritance, but he had no idea when that would actually take place. And he did mention that, yes, mom and dad did send me here. My brother had married a couple of Canaanites, and they wanted me to marry somebody in the family. I think he would have been honest with them. And so a normal stay is 3 days, and it says in verse 14 that he stayed with him a month. Now, if you're a businessman and you're Laban, you can watch that worker And he watched Jacob work for 30 days. And he thought to himself, and this guy's good. This guy's good. You can't find skilled labor like this. And he concocts a plan in his head as to what he's going to do. And here we go. And Laban said, because you're my relatives, now this is really sly. Because you're my relative, why serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? Now, he's a master negotiator. He remembered that when Rebecca went away, that he received quite a bit of a payday. So he asked Jacob, what do you think your wages should be? What leverage does Jacob have? Bam. Family, that's about it. Nothing, right? He doesn't have many wages. He doesn't have anything to offer. All he can offer is himself, work, for 7 years. And so here's Laban's incentive program. He says, now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. His eyes were delicate. Rachel was beautiful, form, and appearance. Let me say this, because I don't know, I'm guessing here. Nobody knows, but this is my best educated guess, or my best uneducated guess. I think that they were similar in appearance as far as their physical appearance. Now, the reason why is, how could you trick somebody on a wedding night if they want? I think the difference would have been in the eyes. And in that culture, I was reading in Proverbs the other day, and it talks about how the eyes can have a profound effect on other people. And it says that she's weak eyes. That can be translated in a number of ways. And it can even be translated as she was a compassionate type of person. We don't really know. So I don't even want to get it. I don't know. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel's were probably vibrant. It could mean that her eyes were like a gray or a blue. And in that culture, they might like the bright brown eyes. I don't know. We really don't know. But let's go on actually with the story. Leah's eyes were delicate. But Rachel was beautiful, form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, for your younger daughter. Guess what? No dowry, but he keeps 2 workers. He keeps Jacob, and he also keeps his daughter Rachel. That's a shepherdess. So this is a win-win for Jacob, for Laban so far, isn't it? And here's he lays out the terms and served you 7 years. And I think that this is showing a little bit of Jacob's character. I think this is showing a little bit that he is a noble man, and that and there was a campaign going around a number of years ago that was called Love Waits. Here, love waited 7 years. Now I want you to think, what year are we in? Do any of you know? Can you say it? None of you know? You don't know what year it is? Somebody tell me what year it is. Oh, wow. It's like pulling teeth. I felt like I was at the dentist's office. At 7. 2032. Okay, I know some of you pulled out your phones to do it. Some of you did it in your heads. 2032. How would you like to go work for somebody and you agreed to this in 2025 and you wouldn't be married until 2032? 2032, 7 years. I think that's a long time, don't you? Well, Laban just shrewdly agrees with this. And I think that one lesson that you and I can learn here is this: there are always going to be people that will take advantage of you in this life. That will happen. I don't care what you do. I don't care where you are. People are going to take advantage of you. But one other thing that's that I see in Laban is Laban doesn't say that he will give Rachel to Jacob after 7 years. He just says that he's going to give Rachel to Jacob. So he didn't say at the end of 7 years. He agreed to it, but it's almost like he had a lawyer mindset where he's got the fine print in a way. What you and I have to remember, and this is something that Jacob learned and something that I think was true in his life, and something even that he passed on to his children, primarily Joseph, is that God sees all that is happening to you. We were reminded of that earlier in Genesis with Hagar. He is the God who sees and the God who hears when we're being taken advantage of. In other words, he sees both the good and the bad. So here we are at the end of 7 years, and we're at verse 21, and he says, "Give me my wife." Again, Laban didn't go to him and say, "At the end of 7 years, here's your reward." No, he made Jacob come to him and ask. Well, the days are fulfilled, 7 years. Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. It came to pass, during the night, there was a switcheroo. So I think probably what happened is Leah put on some of Rachel's clothes. He covered up the face. He didn't know. It was dark. Put on her perfume and everything. And he wakes up in the morning and that's not his wife. Now, there's a lot to think about right here. I think you have to remember when this deception is going on that Jacob did ask for any of this. It's all thrust on him. This is not really what he willingly chose. I think that we could be reminded of this ourselves when we think of Romans 8:28. All things work together for good. And all things did work together for good. No matter what this situation, you have 4 women involved here with Jacob. From the 4 women come 12 times. Right? I think what this shows us too is that the patriarchs had to deal with many difficult personal issues, just like us. People. They lived in a fallen, broken, sinful world, just like we live in a fallen, broken, sinful world. I think when this happened and he wakes up, that initially Jacob is very angry, but then he probably thinks to himself about the deception between him and his bride. I think it's amazing that Jacob doesn't hate Laban after this. What would you think of your father-in-law if he did this? And then he even changed the terms. Well, okay, you can have Rachel now at the end of the week for another 7 years. So it wasn't 7 years, it was actually what? 14 years. But what do Laban's daughters think about their father as he forced this situation even on them? They're, I would say, innocent parties too, are they not? They thought, we're just bargaining chips for Dad. Somewhere along the line, after his initial being very angry with his father-in-law, Jacob had to tackle bitterness. Right? Yes. And he did. I think he probably didn't trust his father-in-law too much after that, but he did forgive him. I wonder if this forgiveness that Jacob had to process in his life is why Joseph was able to do that later with his brothers who sold him into slavery. You know what? Lies and deceptions hurt other people. Laban had 7 years to concoct this plan and tell Jacob, and all he did was ruin his reputation, if he had one. He hurt Jacob because Jacob was deceived. He hurt Leah because I believe that as you continue to read the story, what you read about Leah is that she loved Jacob very much. So she loved but deceived her husband. She was rejected by her husband. There was conflict in the family constantly. And yet she was willing to risk all of these potential problems so she could be married to a man that was a honest, hardworking, godly man to whom the Messianic line was going to come to. Now, one thing that you notice here also is that Jacob doesn't berate Leah, does he? No, he takes it out on who? It's Laban. Well, Rachel was hurt because now she's a pawn to her father, and now there's this rivalry going on with her sister. And as Laban explained, I forgot to tell you about this thing that we do. Laban is not an honorable man. And yet, I think as you go through the pages of Scripture, you find that this has always been true. I think it's Psalm 73, Asaph is writer. And he says, I don't get it. Why is it that evil men seem to prosper when they take advantage of other people in a fallen world? And that's what's going on here. And I guess what I'm seeing here is we're getting a realistic portrayal of what life is like, not just for them, but life is like living in a fallen world. It's hard. No. All this competition is being set up. We're not going to get into the children this week, but all this competition is being set up. It reminds us that families have conflicts. I don't know one single family anywhere that doesn't have at least a little bit of conflict from time to time. You got to work through it, right? Guess why? It's because everybody is sinful. Now, what this doesn't say, and I know it almost sounds contradictory, but I'm looking at the whole picture as you're reading through Genesis. It doesn't say that he doesn't love Leah. But I think he loves Rachel a lot, and that's apparent. How would you like to be Jacob in his precarious position, balancing 2 wives and 2 concubines and other kids? Do you think that that's easy? No. It wasn't, you know what? It wasn't easy for Jacob. It wasn't easy for any of the wives, and it wasn't easy for the kids, was it? But what you don't see Jacob doing is he doesn't complain after the initial confrontation. He knows that, first he knows he needs to get along with Laban, or as he would call off the wedding with Rachel. And I don't think he wanted to hurt Leah, because Leah loved him and he knew it. Okay, so what's the conclusion of all this? First, it's this. We're getting a realistic portrayal of living in a fallen world. I cross this out. A lot of times people say bad things can happen to, why do bad things happen to godly people? There aren't bad things that happen to godly people. There are difficult things. You have to get that through. We have to get that through our head. Things that we would consider bad aren't necessarily bad. A lot of times they are just difficult because God is going to use them ultimately for good. We have to remind ourselves of that song that we say about the Lord is good and he does good. Psalm 119:16, the Lord is good and does good. And the psalmist says, teach me your statutes, teach me how to live. A thing that I see here as far as difficult things happening to godly people is every one of us needs to learn to do this. You have to curb your expectations. Our expectations are this high for everybody else and for what we want, but in reality, we need to curb our expectations really with them in life. The other thing I see here is that God providentially works in our lives, and he gives us great confidence and great comfort. What you see actually here at work, from the leading of Jacob all the way to that well, and initially the very first woman he meets is Rachel, is that God is at work, even through difficult, hard things. It was through hard things as a teenager, 3 very difficult things, that I was open to the gospel. And when the gospel was shared with me, that's how I came to Christ. And God has since then used hard things in my life, and he uses hard things in your life. So you will depend upon him more, so you'll grow in your faith, so you can be a blessing to other people. Amen. And don't allow life to make you bitter. Man, you talk about somebody that could have been angry and bitter. It was Jacob here, but then also Leah. I mean, it goes all around. Don't allow life to make you bitter. We need to forgive and deal with these things and remind ourselves that God is still there and God is in control. I think that this is encouraging to me as I see that God is at work and he's actually going to bring in the Messiah through this family. Isn't that awesome? The other day I was reading in Proverbs. And let me encourage you, if you want to read your Bible and know where to start reading, you have to read in Genesis along with us. But I'll tell you what, Proverbs is a treasure. Because you will read it and God will speak to you and he will show you something about your speech or about your thoughts or about God or just about your own heart. And this is what I read. For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders, he examines all his paths. And that's what he was doing. God was watching Laban, and God was watching Jacob, and God was watching Leah and Rachel and Bilhah, and what's the best one to see? Which sea is always best. So as you came in here today, your life is not perfect. I know it's not. And I know my life is not perfect. But there is a God that is perfect and a God who does good and is good. And as you follow him and as you trust in him, you cast the burdens on him, guess what? He will be with you to it and he will bless you. And Jacob was a blessing, to you today. If you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, it was through him and his faithfulness that Judah came. And from Judah, Perez, then you go down the line. Finally, Jesus to the stammer. Life's not perfect, but God is always there. Let's close this morning with that song, and he was going to lead us. He was, the Lord is good. He is always good. The Lord is good. Then wow, you are always good. If you could find that, Howard. We want to stand up. This was actually written by a young man. Is that you? So I got it right? One of the Hamilton kids. I don't know whether you're familiar with him or not, but he struggled with mental illness all his life and eventually, unfortunately, committed suicide. And yet, when you read these words right here, I think they resonate. They remind us that in a broken world and with all the brokenness that you find yourself in and you see around you, and God is still good. Encourage yourself.
Yeah. Amen.
Looking back, I can see your fingerprints upon my life, always speaking my best. There were times when your way would make no sense, but as you said, you have never left. You are always good, you are only good, you are always good to me. Though my eyes can't see, help my heart believe. You are always only good. Looking in, I can see my frailty, my sin is great, and my strength is so small. Still you stay, and your mercy shelters me. You hold my hand, and you hear my call. You are always good, you are always good, you are always good to me. Though my eyes can't see, help my heart believe. You are always only good. Looking up, I can see your sympathy. I doubt myself, but I'm sure of your love. Lavish grace was poured out at Calvary, securing me for our home above. You are always good, you are only good, you are always good to me. Though my eyes can't see, help my heart believe. You are always only good. You are always only good.
So I hope as we learned about Jacob, then we realize that God is always and only good. Remind yourself of that this week, because you walk out into an imperfect world with a lot of imperfect people, which we ourselves are also too. Hey, God bless you. You have a wonderful week. And remember to take down your little side stand chairs. Thank you.